Welcome, everybody. We're so pleased that you chose to spend your evening with us. I'm Jennifer Boyle, and I'm the director at the Palouse Conservation District. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. This annual meeting is a time for us to gather as community members, close partners, staff, and board to celebrate the conservation that we have collectively implemented over this past year. To also take a look at the great monitoring and data that we have collected to help evaluate the effectiveness of our collective conservation efforts and the outreach and education activities that we have all benefited from. And I know that 2020 has been a very difficult year, was a very difficult year as we move into 2021. And as we embark on this new year, I know we have a lot spinning on our minds, and I really appreciate you all taking some time to pause and reflect on all of the amazing work that we have accomplished together this past year. The Palouse Conservation District is led by a locally elected and appointed board of supervisors, and the volunteer 5-member board is joined by associate supervisors, staff, and other volunteers to carry out the district activities. And none of this would be possible without the local landowners and land managers and land users who want to implement conservation and work towards conservation in the future. So I'd like to introduce our current board. We have Larry Cochran as chair, Chris Heitzteman, Mary Collins, Shiloh Sprouse, and Cheryl Hagen-Zachariason. And we welcome folks who would like to serve the district as associate supervisors. So if you're interested in volunteering in that capacity, please reach out and learn more about what it takes to be an associate supervisor for the district. We have an amazing staff who are committed to natural resources conservation and community service. And throughout the evening, you'll have an opportunity to hear from staff, and then we'll have time at the end to hear from you all and answer your questions or listen to any feedback or comments that you may have. So our agenda for this evening includes taking a look at the values that guide the work that we do, as we took a fresh look at our mission, vision, and values this past year as part of our long-range plan update. Next, we'll highlight our 2020 accomplishments and take a look at where we're headed in 2021. And then we'll do a brief overview of the new long-range plan and save time at the end for any questions that you may have. Palouse Conservation District has been serving the community since 1940, and we took some time in 2020 as we embarked on our 80th year serving conservation needs on the Palouse. We took some time to take a fresh look at our mission, vision, and values as we created a new long-range plan with the community. And we're so excited to share our updated mission and vision and values with the community. You can see our updated mission here that the community, partners, staff, and the board worked on this year. It is fostering the voluntary conservation of natural resources by providing the tools, education, technical expertise, and financial assistance to support our local community. And with that, our vision is to be the trusted resource for voluntary conservation of natural resources, resulting in healthy ecosystems. So a big thank you to the community, partners, staff, and board as we work together towards a new long-range plan this year, and we updated our mission and our vision. So during our long-range planning process, we also updated the values that guide our work. And it makes me really proud to be part of an organization that has guiding values such as those listed here. And one of the values that's at the foundation of all that we do is being of service to our community. And with that in mind, we're going to transition to hearing about some of the highlights of the accomplishments from 2020. So although 2020 certainly was a year full of uncertainty, we were able to serve our community in many new ways. And we're really excited to have a new long-range plan guiding our work for the next 5 years. This year, or I should say last year, we also did some much needed work on organizational development and updated our policy manual. We are also really honored and thrilled to be awarded the renewal of the Palouse Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which includes $5.5 million in federal funding over the next 5 years to implement conservation that reduces erosion, benefits soil health, improves water quality, and increases habitat in the Palouse watershed. And this federal funding, which comes to us through NRCS, will be matched with $5.5 million in local and regional funding over the next 5 years. And partners and staff were able to secure funding for local and regional conservation efforts to provide new opportunities for conservation locally and throughout the region. This year has also been a year for continued organizational development. We finalized our shift to a program-focused structure, and we're excited to work together as a team to really strengthen our programs with the program leads in each of our 4 program areas. So in education and outreach, we have Jody Prout. In research and monitoring, Ryan Boylan. Finance and administration, Shelly Scott. And in resource conservation, Brad Johnson. And Steph Harper helping with resource conservation coordination. Now, each of these 4 program areas at PCD will be sharing some of their highlights this evening from 2020, and as well as a forecast of what to expect as we hit the ground running in 2021. So now I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie Harper to share some of the highlights from the Resource Conservation Program.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Harper. I work for the Resource Conservation Program here at the district, and I just wanted to take a moment to introduce you virtually to the Resource Conservation team. These are the technical staff members here at the district who work with landowners to address any of their personal goals that they have for their property, as well as plan and implement conservation projects. If you have any questions, whether it's about invasive plants, riparian restoration, or you're interested in doing a project on your own land, please feel free to reach out to any one of the staff members in the Resource Conservation Program. All of our contact information can be found on our website. If you're unsure who to reach out to specifically, you can call our main office and you'll be directed to someone based on the topic that you're interested in. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or need any help with your conservation needs. Resource conservation had quite a busy year this year in 2020. We did a lot of habitat restoration, as you can see in those numbers below on the screen. We were able to plant a lot of native trees and shrubs this year, and they're out there on the landscape. A lot of those were planted in riparian buffers. We planted new riparian buffers as well as maintained and enhanced existing buffers. We do a lot of monitoring, whether it's riparian buffers or working on Palouse prairie remnants that we have in our district, as well as working on a lot of planting projects that aren't necessarily riparian projects, such as the Spalding's catchfly plantings up on Steptoe Butte, as well as working on a project at the Copple Community Farm. So we're able to continue all of that work that we were doing as far as habitat restoration. We also worked on some in-stream habitat structures for steelhead. This fall, we also worked on some stream stabilization projects, stream bank stabilization projects. And we use a lot of different practices to do this. One of them is a log post structure. And we intertwine different debris and willows into these structures to help not only protect the bank, but also in hopes to kind of rebuild that bank. In the left picture on the slide, you can see some of the debris that we use are the Christmas trees that we have recycled from previous years. So if you historically have donated your Christmas tree to the district, it is out there on the landscape working to help stabilize stream banks, which is pretty cool. We also do some other practices for stream bank stabilization, such as a rock toe. And you can see what that looks like in the middle picture on the slide. And these practices are usually used on larger streams and rivers where the high flow and velocity are too much for those post structures. And so sometimes we do need to use heavier materials in order to help us stabilize those banks and stop them from eroding further. As far as conservation agriculture in 2020, we were able to continue conducting field site visits. We worked with landowners to complete conservation plans based on their own individual goals. We had our yearly RCPP sign up as well as a CSP sign up for landowners who were interested in conservation tillage and nutrient management programs. We also worked this summer with NRCS to recertify some CRP grass stands. And that was to basically re-enroll acres into a program that is run through the FSA and NRCS offices. And then, of course, continuing to work with our landowners who are already working in different programs. So in 2020, a lot of that work focused on enrolling new acres into conservation tillage as well as nutrient management programs. But we were also able to complete a cover crop pilot project to help landowners explore alternatives to fallow, which was a really cool project for us to complete this year. So 2020 was a really great year. We continued working on our goals to increase soil health, water quality, and habitat. And now I'm going to pass it on to Brad Johnson, the Middle Snake Watershed Manager, to talk a little bit more about what's to come in 2021.
Thank you, Steph, for that awesome update. And good evening, everyone. My name is Brad Johnson, Resource Conservation Lead with the Palouse Conservation District. And I'm going to be showing you the things that we have on the horizon for 2021. We have new signups within the Regional Conservation Partnership Program for soil health and water quality practices. So watch for a rollout of that program. In the spring of 2021, with ecology funding, we have direct seed projects available. So if you're interested in those, please contact Tammy Stubbs with the Palouse Conservation District. We'll continue the riparian buffer implementation and maintenance of existing plantings that we've been doing over the years. So if you're interested in any of those programs, as always, we provide technical assistance. And if you're interested in any other programs, please take a look at the website or talk to any of the resource conservation coordinators to see if there's anything that you'd be interested in doing in the upcoming year. And then one of the most important things we do is we search for additional funding for conservation practices that landowners are interested in. So we'll be looking at different grant and funding sources. So we really appreciate you participating in this annual meeting. Wish we could be in person. And at this time, I'm going to forward it to Ryan Boylan with the Research and Monitoring Program with the Palouse Conservation District, and have a great evening.
Hi, my name is Ryan Boylan. I'm the Research and Monitoring Coordinator here at the Palouse Conservation District. And I'm going to share some of the highlights from our program for 2020. Before I do that, I just want to acknowledge some of our other coworkers. Nick Harris, who's the Research and Monitoring Specialist, and Kaylin O'Malley, who's the Conservation Research and Education Intern, along with Audrey Martinez, who's the AmeriCorps member, has been helping us out for the last several months. So one of the first exciting projects that we started this year was reconnaissance sampling in the North and South Forks of the Palouse River. This includes 2 sites in Steptoe Canyon. We call it reconnaissance sampling because we're sampling all the named tributaries that are feeding into those larger rivers like the North and South Fork to identify streams and rivers that have higher concentrations of non-point source pollutants. And here you can see the 11 sites in the South Fork of the Palouse River. It's actually 9 sites in the South Fork and two in Steptoe Canyon. And then here you can see 9 sites that we're monitoring in the North Fork of the Palouse River. And these sites are really interesting to me because the district has been monitoring water quality data in the North Fork since 2003. So it's a really good check and long-term data set on how well the conservation practices are impacting water quality. In 2020, we also partnered with Washington State Department of Ag to do some pesticide monitoring. This is the first time the district has done this. And it's in Dry Creek, which is just northeast of Colfax. But that's where our site's located. And we visited this site from May through October. There was a 2-month lag because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're just starting to get most of our data back. And hopefully by the end of January or early February, we'll have all the numbers crunched, and we'll be sharing that with the public and anyone else that's interested. So stay tuned for that. We've also been running a soil health program for the last 4 years, and currently we have 17 farms and 54 fields that we sample. The whole goal of this program is to identify regionally specific soil health indicators for the Palouse across a suite of management practices. And in this program, we sample in the spring and sometimes in the fall, and samples are collected at 2 depths, 0 to 6 inches and 6 to 12 inches. And then each one of these fields, the samples are at those 2 depths are collected in one single bag. So we visit a bunch of points in a field, put it in a bag or composite them, and then send them off to the lab to look at different soil health metrics. And this year, Nick Harris, who's the research and monitoring specialist, put in a lot of work to make the Palouse Conservation District soil health data portal, which is really cool. Any of the participating producers can click on that blue box there where it says get started here, and they enter a user ID, and all the data that we've collected will pop up. And this is just a small example of what that would look like. So there's a lot of parameters that we measure, and the participant can select those parameters. And in this case, it's just showing organic matter. And so there's a lot going on here. I'll just walk you through it really quickly. On the left-hand side there, you can see the map of the field sites. This top box here is just an average organic matter concentration with depth. That's what's on the x-axis here for every season that we've sampled. The next one is a management comparison. So looking at all the management types or practices that we've sampled and how they compare for this specific parameter, or organic matter in this case. And we sampled everything from cover crops to CRP, conventional tilled fields, true no-till fields, native prairie, restored prairie, etc. And this last graph here is what we're calling our regional comparison. It does 3 things. It shows average organic matter concentrations with depth, again, on the x-axis here. And this green graph, this green bar represents the farm average. So all the fields that we sampled, what is the average for that farm? What is the average for this particular field? And in this case, it's RVFB. And then what is the regional average for the management practice that's used on that farm? So in this case, it's no-till. And for this particular example, you can see that this field average is higher than the regional average for most no-till operations. So pretty cool stuff. It's still a work in progress. And we're hoping to develop that more into 2021. We also spent a lot of time, well, a group of us spent a lot of time creating Palouse CD's conservation database. This is really cool. We compiled all the conservation projects and practices that the district has implemented since 1999. Kaylin O'Malley, who I mentioned in the very beginning, did a ton of work to make all this happen. And this is just kind of what it looks like. We went through a bunch of old spreadsheets and tried to compile every single project that we've done. Kaylin also went through a lot of the cost share folders and all of our filing cabinets to see what the district has done in the past. She then created this really cool form. So now once projects are completed, conservation planners can just fill out the form, and it populates a database in a program that we use called Smartsheet. And so our database is all in Smartsheet. And then most recently, she made this story map that kind of tells and shows where all the conservation practices have been implemented and the different types and categories that the district does, and how much money has been spent in each sort of sub watershed across the entire Palouse River watershed. So if you guys are interested in this, there's a link up there. It'll also be on our website sometime really soon. Another really awesome project that we started working on with a lot of help from the resource conservation team, specifically Anthony Hatcher. And again, Kaylin and Melly did a lot of this work, was vegetation monitoring of our riparian restoration sites. So this past spring and fall, 22 of the riparian restoration projects were assessed for various vegetation metrics. Some of these included stems per acre, canopy cover, herbivory, weed pressure, changes in plant communities over time. And so this is a pretty intensive protocol that we run. We try to do it once before sites planted, and then once in the first year of the project, and then 5 years out, 10 years out. And in the first 3 years, there's a shorter protocol that we run. So just some examples of what that data looks like. That graph that just popped up on the right-hand side, you can see 2 bars. The blue bar is our baseline data and for stems per acre. And the orange bar is what was measured in 2020. And stems per acre is really important for 2 reasons. A lot of funding agencies are interested in how successful we are, and it's good for us to see how many plants are surviving after we planted. The goal is to be in between 250 and 400. So for this particular site, we did it. Another example of data that we gather is riparian vegetation communities, and that's what you see that just popped up on the left-hand side there. You can see the percentages of all the different vegetation communities. You know, one of the goals of restoring riparian areas is to bring it back to a more native plant community. So in this example, it's a pretty diverse site. You can see there's a lot of meadow foxtail, a lot of reed canary grass, a lot of maybe degraded pasture. And the goal is to move it towards more of this, like this black hawthorn, woods rose, native plant community. And so as we do this over time, we'll be able to see these in theory, we'll be able to see these percentages shift. This is also just a new program. So we're currently in the process of creating a system for managing the data and getting all the numbers in one place. There's a lot of really cool possibilities that we can look into that would help us determine the factors that make successful projects. And then this data will also be used just to inform our project management decisions and maintenance needs. That's the whole idea of adaptive management. And finally, just looking downstream and what we're going to be working on in 2021, we're going to be doing pesticide monitoring in an additional location that was funded through a grant that we wrote with Washington Department of Ag through the EPA. We're going to continue our soil health program, sampling cover crop plots, field trials, and all the management practices I mentioned earlier. We're going to be doing some temperature monitoring in Paradise Creek to assess some of the work that the district has done there over the last 8 to 10 years. We're going to be assessing stream bank stabilization project with drones. We're going to be working with researchers at the University of Idaho to do some remote sensing of crop residue in Whitman County. We're going to complete the assessment phase of the National Water Quality Initiative in Spring Creek, Union Flat Creek watershed. And this is a watershed plan that once it's completed will identify areas that generate high amounts of runoff and erosion, and then we'll be able to implement some projects in those areas through some funds allocated by the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And finally, we're going to assist with developing a citizen science program for water quality monitoring through the education outreach, with the education outreach program. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jody, and she'll tell you more about that program.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jody Prout. I'm the Education Outreach Coordinator here at the district. I'm the head of the Education Outreach Department, and I work alongside Elizabeth Sebo, our Education Outreach Specialist, and we're supported by our 3 AmeriCorps members this year. So Education Outreach at the district really is a group effort. It takes everyone being willing to share in the work that they're doing and share their technical expertise and passion with the community. And we wouldn't be able to do that without the investment of the staff, board, and the community. So this past year, despite the current COVID-19 situation and social distancing, we were able to continue to offer programming in our community. That came in multiple forms, included hosting both in-person and virtual workshops and events, including in classroom and virtual classroom lessons. creating publications and displays that went out into the community. We maintained the Adopt a Stream program in partnership with the City of Pullman Stormwater. And then we were able to offer a few limited volunteer opportunities with our Plant the Palouse volunteer program. While we just were able to hold a few, they were essential to helping us getting conservation on the ground. And we hope to be able to offer more in the spring. We continue to offer K-12 education programs in Whitman and Asotin counties with over 1,000 students being reached. And this included a variety of topics and lessons with our Wheat Week program focused on agriculture, or our Drain Rangers program focused on stormwater. And these at the beginning of the year were all in person, and now they're based around videos and kits that go out to the teachers and students that can be done in a limited contact classroom or at home. We started off their year strong with a number of in-person events, and most of these events were the highest attendance that we've ever seen. With our annual meeting in January and February, we hosted our alternative cropping symposium, a producer-driven event. And then our conservation talk series that was initially hosted in person at Paradise Creek Brewery Trailside and has now been converted to an online platform. Recordings from those presentations can be now found on our website, and any information for our future talks this winter and spring are also up there as well. So please feel free to go check that out if you're interested. So 2020 brought a lot of new challenges in getting information out to the community and provided us an opportunity to get creative and expand our horizons. So one such program is our soil health sit down, and this is our virtual pivot from the alternative cropping symposium. It's a monthly conversation with producers, industry professionals, and researchers about soil health. And it's really meant to encourage dialogue surrounding different adoptions onto operations on the Palouse, so cover crops, companion crops, or any alternative cropping systems. We do have one happening tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7 a.m. If you are interested in joining us, we'll have a local producer talk, as well as a representative from NRCS on doing some methods to test for soil health on your operation. Some other programming that we were able to offer in this new time of a virtual world is our podcast. So one of our AmeriCorps members, Allison Crowley, started this, the Palouse Pulse podcast, and it features staff, board members, and landowners in each episode telling their stories of working with the district. And another program we were able to offer, put together, is the Palouse Root Cellar, and this is a way to connect consumers with local producers. It's kind of a virtual farmers market during these times of COVID, when some of the product delivery sources have been reduced. We also started a citizen science pollinator program in partnership with the Pullman Community Gardens at Copple Farm. So this was using an app to collect data on pollinators, and we hope to revitalize this program in next summer. As part of Orca Recovery Day in October, a statewide campaign to address issues on the survival of southern resident orcas in Puget Sound. So this was an activity to get folks engaged, thinking about salmon habitat and what we do here on the Palouse and how that affects downstream waters. And as we continue to navigate this ever-increasing virtual world, we're hoping to be able to continue to offer more adaptive programming, so please keep an eye out for the next year. We also installed some interpretation signs in our community, working at Copple Farm again to install some pollinator plots, putting in some bee hotels, as well as some bird boxes. At our own office, we're working on a native plant demonstration garden, along with an interpretive sign and plant identification signs there. We recently put together this landowner guide to buffer maintenance and success for landowners that are interested in continuing maintenance on their project, either if they are currently within a contract with us or they have an interest to take it on themselves. And this includes a schedule of maintenance and graphics. Another program we're involved in is the Whitman County Voluntary Stewardship Program. And this is an effort to work towards documenting stewardship activities that are currently being done on the landscape to protect critical areas such as highly erodible lands, aquifer recharge areas, and local waterways. And this is really meant to demonstrate the dedication that farmers and ranchers have towards conservation on their property without having regulation enforced. So within the 5-year reporting period, we were able to tell the story of 76 producers and land managers in Whitman County for a total of over 500 stewardship activities. With over 1,000 operations in Whitman County, we're hoping to continue to tell the story of stewardship as this program continues on into the next phase. So looking forward for 2021, we were recently awarded funding through the EPA for an environmental education grant, and this will work on administering water resource literacy campaigns and educational opportunities in the community. We're working with community partners to implement mini grants as part of this same funding, focused on water resource literacy. Working on some virtual curriculum development for K through 12 students, developing a citizen science water quality monitoring program, hosting virtual programs with workshops and talk series and tours, different community engagement activities such as an adopt a tree program or local stream cleanups. And then we'll be working to put together a livestock needs assessment and a demonstration workshop for livestock producers. So with that, I am now going to turn it over to Shelly Scott to give an update on our finance and administration department.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shelly Scott, and I'm the Finance and Administration Manager for the district. And my other team members include Caitlin Heinrichs, who serves as Operations and Special Projects Coordinator, and Terry Renee, who joined us recently and serves as our Finance Specialist. This is a quick snapshot of the numbers for 2020. Revenue was $2,154,462, and expenditures were $2,151,868. We processed grant vouchers and payment requests of 170. We issued 377 checks and processed 687 electronic transactions. The sources of revenue for the district are primarily from federal, state, and local grant funding, with a lesser amount coming from program sources such as tree and plant sales and issuing burn permits. Federal funding accounts for 27% of the total revenue received by the district. 21% of that is in federal direct, and 6% is in federal indirect funds. State funding accounts for a little more than 62% of our revenue this year. The two largest sources of state-funded grants are the Washington Department of Ecology, which provided 35% of our total revenues, and the State Conservation Commission, which provided 24% of our revenues. Interlocal grants and agreements account for almost 8%, and our programs a little less than 1% of revenue. Finance and administration was reorganized this year to become a separate program that supports all of our other programs. We now consist of a manager, a temporary operations coordinator, and a finance specialist. PCD undertook a software conversion in 2020. The district purchased Bias, which is now called Springbrook Express, and we launched the conversion on July 1 of 2020. Finance, payroll, and grants management modules are now integrated, and the payroll processes were audited, updated, and corrected as needed. We secured a higher credit limit with a new credit card provider, and this enabled us to issue additional cards to employees based upon programmatic needs. And we made significant changes to our communications as well. Cell phones were issued to all employees and the desk phones were decommissioned. We updated our email to Office 365, and we started using a voicemail and call routing program as well. And we conducted a computer needs assessment of all of our employees, and over 2021, we'll be working to address many of those needs that were identified. On the employee resources front, as you can see, there's a snapshot of our employee dashboard here. We made a lot of changes and improvements and additions to this year. And some of those improvements were the vehicle dashboard was expanded, the accident response was improved. We created the HR dashboard, the recruitment portal was expanded, and the benefits portal was revised and improved. The onboarding and offboarding processes for employees were improved, and then there was significant COVID-19 adaptation utilizing new resources to ensure that the day-to-day operations were not disrupted. And we automated the monthly expense reports for all staff. Looking forward to 2021, we're looking to improve and increase our efficiency and proficiency with our new softwares. We'll be utilizing parts of the program and software that we haven't utilized to date, such as the budgeting and reporting functions. I'm looking to streamline the internal audit process for the district as well, and then to continue to provide a responsive and adaptive administrative response to our leadership and our team members. And with that, I will turn this back over to Jennifer. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to all the program leads for sharing highlights from 2020 and for sharing a forecast of what we can expect for conservation on the Palouse in 2021. As you've seen exemplified in our work tonight, it really is a community engagement with conservation that makes all this come together. It's strong partnerships and teamwork, and it really is that teamwork that makes the dream work. And so it's everyone working together. And we are so fortunate to have land users and land managers and land owners who are committed to conservation, partners who are willing to think creatively about how to amplify conservation, and passionate and dedicated staff who choose an organization like Palouse CD because they believe in the mission and they're guided by that mission and they're here to serve the community. So thanks to all of you. It has been a good year to provide more opportunities for conservation on the Palouse and really amplify those efforts. It's also been a year to provide more support and strength to the different program areas at Palouse CD that you heard about tonight. And I'm so appreciative to all the staff. As you heard tonight, they work really hard, not just within their programs, but they work across programs and between programs, as it really is important that we have a lot of inter-program coordination. And so now we're really excited to share a video reel of some of the other work that was accomplished in 2020 that we just don't have time to put into words this evening. So we're going to share a short slide video with you all, and I hope that you enjoy it. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that video as much as I did. We usually have a conservation tour every year that the public is invited to attend, but this year, due to COVID-19, we were not able to have that conservation tour. So I hope that the slideshow provides just a little peek at the conservation work that happened in 2020. It's always great to see pictures of folks who are sharing their time and energy each day and working with the community to ensure that the conservation of natural resources on the Palouse is a top priority. So as we move into 2021, please keep an eye open on upcoming events and keep an eye open for an upcoming conservation tour. And we hope that you will choose to join us and get out in the field and see some of this work firsthand. So we are going to transition into talking a little bit more about the long-range plan and just do a brief overview of the long-range plan. As we talked about earlier, we started our long-range plan working with the community, and we really did work to build the long-range plan from the ground up. So by working with the community at meetings like the one that you're at this evening, we started a couple years ago talking with folks at our annual meetings about what their conservation priorities were, because we really wanted to hear from the community and make sure that we are addressing those community needs. And after talking with the community and collecting feedback for a couple years, we found the top 3 community resources were identified as soil health and erosion control, water quality, and replenishing the landscape. Independently, the staff met, and we were really pleased to see that what lifted out of that process were the same top 3 conservation priorities. So the board was able to pull together some criteria for selecting our conservation priorities. So we wanted to make sure that all of our conservation priorities were community supported, based on solid science and data-driven decision making. We wanted to make sure that we had willing participants that would do the conservation work, and that we were not only looking for conservation priorities now, but looking for innovative conservation trends. And as in all the work that we do, we wanted to make sure it was fit within the mission of the district, and that we were identifying partnership opportunities to make sure that we were filling in any gaps for conservation work, but not duplicating any efforts. So in addition to the top 3 priority natural resource concerns and conservation needs, the community also identified the following conservation needs: water quantity, climate change, urban development, including protection of habitat and working lands, small acreage issues, weed control and invasive species control, anadromous fish recovery and passage, air quality, and energy conservation. And we took these priority natural resource concerns, and for each of them, we created some goals for the next 5 years. And so I'm just going to share with you 3 of those goals that we created so you get a sense of what that looks like. The first goal I'm going to share with you is for soil health and erosion control, that by 2025, 10,000 additional acres of conservation tillage would be implemented throughout the Palouse Conservation District. The second goal is that water quality related, that by 2025, Palouse Conservation District will establish 5 years of water quality data for all monitored tributaries. And then the final goal that I'll share with you this evening is related to replenishing the landscape, which includes habitat, vegetation, prairie, pollinators, and aesthetics. That by 2025, Steptoe Butte will be declared a key conservation area for Spalding's catchfly. So those are just some examples of some of the goals that are included in the long-range plan. The full long-range plan is on our website, and I encourage you to go read through the long-range plan, reach out to any of the staff or board members. Our long-range plan is a living document, so we are continually taking community feedback as we shape where we're going for the future and meeting our local community conservation needs. So as the first step, as we go down the path following our long-range plan, we're going to just talk a little bit about looking downstream in 2021. And the work that we're going to do in 2021, we're going to continue strengthening the infrastructure of Palouse Conservation District so that we can better serve the community. We will also be strengthening and expanding our local and regional partnerships so that we can continue to be responsive to community conservation needs both locally and regionally. And as part of that, we will be diversifying our funding sources to ensure that our programs and services have continuity for the future. Additionally, we will be working to always strengthen our relationships, both within the community and with local partners and landowners and land users, working really hard to maintain our current relationships and working really hard to reach new audiences to ensure that we have conservation for all. And then, as we talked about this evening, it all starts with the community. So we will continue listening to the community and determining new conservation priorities and exploring ways that Palouse Conservation District can support those conservation needs in the community. And again, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. I'm going to now turn it back over to Jody Prout, who has worked with some of our incredible sponsors to provide some great opportunities. And I believe we have some raffle items that we'll be sharing with you all this evening. So here you go, Jody.